Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijayacharya Story Shishimata Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijayacharya Story Shishimata Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananti Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Nam Acharya Shiladas Thakur Ki Prem Sakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Sisi Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Navadip Dham Ki Gangamai Jamunamai Ki Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Ki Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam 4th Canto, Chapter 19, text number 26. Tadabhignaya Bhagavan Pritu Pritu Parakrama Indraya Kupita Banam Adattodayata Karmuka Tadabhignaya Bhagavan Pritu Pritu Parakrama Indraya Kupito Banam Adattodayata Karmuka Tadabhignaya Bhagavan Pritu Pritu Parakrama Indraya Kupito Banam Adattodayata Karmuka. Tadabhignaya Bhagavan Pritu Pritu Parakrama Indraya Kupito Banam Tadabhignaya Bhagavan Pritu Pritu Parakrama Indraya Kopito Bhanam Adattodayata Karmuka Tadabhignaya Bhagavan Pritu Pritu Parakrama Indraya Kopito Bhanam Adattodayata Karmuka. So word for word, Tat, that, Abhignaya, understanding, Bhagavan, the incarnation of Godhead, Pritu, King Pritu, Pritu Parakrama, celebrated as very powerful, Indraya, upon Indra, Kupita, very angry, being very angry, Banam, an arrow, Adatta, took up, Udyate, having taken up, Karmuka, the bow. Translation. Maharaj Pritu, who was celebrated as very powerful, immediately took up his bow and arrows and prepared to kill Indra himself. Indra had introduced such irregular sannyas orders. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is the duty of the king not to tolerate the introduction of any irreligious systems. Since King Prithu was an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, certainly his duty was to cut down all kind of irreligious systems. Following in his footsteps, all heads of state should themselves be bona fide representatives of God and should cut down all irreligious systems. Unfortunately, they are cowards who declare a secular state. Such mentality is a way of compromising religious and irreligious systems. But because of these, citizens are generally becoming uninterested in spiritual advancement. Thus, the situation deteriorates to such an extent that human society becomes hellish. The translation again, Maharaj Prithu, who was celebrated as very powerful, immediately took up his bow and arrows and prepared to kill Indra himself, because Indra had introduced such irregular sannyas orders. So over the weeks we have been going through the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, and now we are on text number 26. And in the purport, there are few points, the short purport, and there are few points that are very important. One is that the king does not, or the leader does not tolerate the introduction of irreligious systems. And it's his duty to cut down all kinds of irreligious systems. And the third point is that because leaders want to be good to everybody, so they declare a secular state. So they compromise religious and irreligious principle. They don't want to displease anybody, totally, and they don't want to. They want to have a religious system, but at the same time they want to have it all embracing, all inclusive, but sometimes to the detriment of the society. And that is why they don't advance spiritually, because there's irreligious systems, and people become uninterested over course of time. We see that people are becoming uninterested in spiritual advancement. And what happened? Then the situation deteriorates, and then society becomes hellish. So the whole thing is in this purport. I just paraphrased everything. In this purport, that King Prithu was a strong king, and he was prepared to kill Indra himself, because he was not was engaging in a sinful act by stealing the horse when it was sacrificed, when the sacrifice was done. So why was he prepared to kill Indra himself? And that is good leadership, which we'll discuss later. Like in the Krishna consciousness movement, how do we advance spiritually? We advance spiritually to the mercy of Krishna. And the real guru is never killed. But the so-called gurus, the pseudo-gurus, the false gurus, they should be killed. They should be killed. Like Krishna's main duties to, at least two main duties why he appears: to protect the saints, that's paratranaya sadhunam, and to destroy the miscreants, vinaschaya duskritam. Because demons who challenge Krishna, they also want to share in his property. They want to enjoy the kingdom of God without God. And they are enemies. And killing enemies is acceptable in this context. But the question of killing one's guru, that's not what we meant to do. But Prabhupada writes in a purport that sometimes for Krishna's sake, if necessary, one may have to kill the guru. But this is only if Krishna wants it. So in this case, Prithu Maharaj had that intention to kill Indra because he was engaging in a sinful act. He was engaging in a sinful act. Because, as we was explaining, Guru and Krishna are the same in one sense. We get Krishna consciousness through the mercy of both. But the real guru is never to be killed, but the pseudo guru or the false guru should be killed. So therefore, in the verse itself, it's saying that King Prithu prepared himself with his bows and arrows to kill Indra. And just like, we see the example of Prahlad Maharaj, who witnessed Nishingadev killing his father. And in Vedic culture, the father is also the guru. Father is also guru. But here we see the guru is being killed. But Prahlad Maharaj did not protest in any way or try to save him from being killed. Because Prahlad understood that the body is not the real self. He had that understanding, and that the soul is his father. So he accepted that Lord's action, but later he prayed for his father's deliverance. So I'm looking at it from that context. Then we find that the importance of a leader is described in the purport, especially in terms of governmental institutions. When one is a ruler or the leader, they suppress religion in various ways. Various ways. Depending on the political system, the legal framework, so many cultural contexts. And some of the ways they suppress religion is anti-religious legislation. Because where the government may enact certain laws that restrict religious practices, maybe banning certain religious activities, certain religious groups, registration requirements, like when you want to register a religious society, then one has to go through a whole process, often creating bureaucratic obstacles that inhibit their activities. Like we find in the Juhu story. In the Juhu story, there were so many obstacles. There were so many obstacles placed in presence of Prabhupada to build a temple. But he promised that he's going to build a temple for Radha Rasa Bihari. That was his promise. And he wanted to fulfill that promise. Even prior to going to the West, he came to that play area and he said, he would like to build a temple, even prior to that. So he came, he wanted to do that, but when he wanted to do that, there were so many obstacles. So these are called legal restrictions, because you had to go through the bureaucracy of state institutions. You'll be passed from one person to the next, and nobody will be doing anything until you may give them a bribe or something like that. So even to register the society, register a spiritual institution, there are so many restrictions. Here we see Prithu is ready to kill Indra. But in that, I just picked up that point now, that in the Jew story, Srila Prabhupada prayed to Lord Nishingadev to kill Mr. Naya, because he was causing so much pain to the people, and he had so many obstacles. But we'll bring that point up again later. So then there's also, in state institutions, they have control and surveillance. Because the government, like especially in the European countries, in the Western world, they monitor religious gatherings and activities. They monitor. So they use, technology to control, to monitor. Then there's censorship and propaganda. In a way they restrict or censor religious content in media and publications to limit the spreading of religious ideas. There's repression and coercion, harassment, intimidation, arrests and detention for somebody practicing spiritual life. We found this in Russia, in other parts of the world, where devotees were arrested. And of recent, even one of our sannyasis were arrested. So there is arrest and detention. Because when you're participating in religious activities, it's deemed as illegal and subversive. So even like education and indoctrination, just like in, we all go to school, we have a morning prayer. We're praying every morning. I don't know what we used to pray. I forget the prayer, but but we should pray in the morning. But in state institutions, especially education departments, the child is subjected to indoctrination from an early age. It reminds me of Putana also. Kamsa had engaged Putana to kill all children, to kill children. We was sent even to kill Krishna, the Supreme Lord, who was just a child. So was Kamsa sent his representatives. Now the same representatives are in the form of educators, teachers. Because if somebody speaks about religious, their religious beliefs and their processes they follow in spiritual life, there's somebody to suppress it. But in the case of Kamsa, even before Krishna took birth, he was sent to suppress or to kill. So this is what institutions do. Nowadays, in the new government, it is not so. They don't bother too much about what people practice. But in the apartheid government, yes, they were, and in the previous government, they're very conscious that if you practice any philosophy outside their beliefs, especially the Christian tradition, they allowed it, but they would monitor it also. Because I worked in the State Department, and we had to go through so much of media clearances. If you didn't know that they had an Indian council, which is called the South African SAIC, the South African Indian Council, which was where I worked in the building, and they would have discussions, and they were Indian people, like Rajbansi was one of them, but there were others, whites and things, and they would be there to suppress anything that was against their principles. Many people don't know the background of what goes on in the public sector at that time, in the apartheid time. So there's economic and social pressures, so many cultural and social suppression, like restriction of religious symbols, banning of display of religious symbols, so many things. Limiting and prohibiting religious festival, rituals, expression of faith. So that's like really what is a representative of, where Kamsa's representatives are employed in all this place to kill Krishna when Krishna is taking birth, or to kill one's Krishna consciousness at a very, very early stage. So also there's legal prosecution if there's group gatherings and like in other countries they imprison people for even going on Harinam. So these are so many examples. Like in North Korea, China, they're very, very harsh and hard. And even in some of the other countries. So just gave a background of that because that's what the purport is speaking about. Sisi Radha Radhanath Ki Jai. What is the qualities of a leader? What is good leadership? What is good leadership? One who teaches by examples. Yes. Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about false gurus. He describes as two types of false gurus, internal and external. So the external false guru is like the pretentious hypocrite who presents himself as guru even though he is not qualified. And sometimes, and this is, and I thought about it, I was thinking more about myself. Sometimes we try to present some high philosophy that's beyond our understanding. Even in Krishna consciousness, we can be suffering from this. We can be a false guru in that sense. And then and because we take shelter of the mind, we try to understand through material logic to understand the absolute truth. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the Krishna Samhita writes that those who are on the path of attachment, Rag Marg, should avoid the first obstacle. And the first obstacle is accepting a bogus guru like Indra, who represents that. Should accepting the bogus guru, because we see that even Putana came in the guise of a nurse to kill Krishna. And one who accepts reason and argument as his guru and who learns the process of worship from such guru is said to have accepted the shelter of a bogus guru. That's what is in the verse purport. So there's so much to say on this topic. But one who is greedy to get worship, praise, and money from his disciples is also a bogus guru. A bona fide guru is not waiting for his disciples to give him money or worship him. But if they do bring some money to him, he uses it in Krishna's service. And a true spiritual master is always is an ocean of mercy. He's a perfect person. Perfect means that he's following the orders of his spiritual master, and who does good for everyone, and is free from material desires, fully knowledgeable, and is able to cut apart all doubts. That is a true spiritual master. So I'm just drawing the comparison between a bogus guru and somebody who's a true spiritual master. And whilst I was reading last night, I recall, Bhakti Tita Maharaj was making this point when he first met President Nelson Mandela. And he was telling him why these third world countries, there's so much of violence, especially during election times, and we're seeing that in other parts of the world. Where the leader becomes very greedy and he takes the state assets, especially in terms of money, and he make it his own property. But subtly, we may also have that kind of, we want to control, even in spiritual institution, we may have this desire. We may not take the asset, but we have false proprietorship. We want to control it and own it. So we have to be very, very careful of that. He said, often third world leaders become millionaires overnight because they take the state's assets. And when he was speaking to the Nelson Mandela, that was for the first time, even before the ANC came into power, he asked him if he knew why certain race groups, or everybody did not vote for him en masse, or won't vote for him. Because then he explained, most people are sensitive to what black leadership in general was meant to black Africa. I was referring to a recent conference in Togo where one of the issues discussed was embezzlement. So he was, he attended many conferences, and he was advising many kings in Africa. In Africa is completely different from other parts of the world. And then he said, it was revealed that heads of state had remitted about $22 billion to their foreign bank account in less than 1 year. Because they have taken all these assets for themselves. And he was telling, I told Mr. Mandela, I quote Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I told Mr. Mandela that it was up to him to send out the message that leadership does not have to mean that the leader lines his pocket while the people continue to suffer. How that sounds? This is what it is. So there's so many leaders, have done these things. There's corruption, embezzlement, cheating. These are all coming from people like Indra, Putana. False, bogus. What do we do? Do we worship people like this? Should we? Bogus? No. And the verse, it talks about sannyasis. Sometimes we wonder, because we hear in Kali Yuga, one shouldn't take sannyas. But in Prabhupada's time, sometimes devotees who are not up to the standard also want to take sannyas, and we'll discuss that a little later. But one interesting pastime in Srila Prabhupada's time, one of his disciples, during the 1976 Mayapur festival, actually it was Hamsaduta's wife. So Hamsadutta took sannyas. So his wife was not there. His wife was in Vrindavan. But when she got this message, imagine if you're married and your husband just takes sannyas. So, it affected her very badly. But when Prabhupada arrived at Krishna Balaram Mandir, she demanded to see Prabhupada. So she said, Prabhupada, since my husband had taken sannyas, I hate everyone. and everything in this material world. And Prabhupada looked at her and simply said, you are making very much advancement. Because this is what he said. So then she came to reality and she went around Vrindavan to ask like different widows how to act when the husband takes sannyas. Generally the process is one, very systematically we go through the whole process of being celibate, married life, retired life, vanaprastha life, and then take sannyas. So she learned that it was customary to worship the shoes or the objects of his. So her idea was to make a deity. A deity. So she went to the usual Loy Bazaar, which is one of the bazaars. It reminds me the Gaur Nitai deities we also bought it. Not actually Loy Bazaar. It's Ritya Bazaar. It's the next bazaar from Loy Bazaar. So we bought the deities, Gaur Nitai deities. Adikeshava bought it. And I went and picked it up and we both went to Govardhan with the deities. Those Gaur Nitai deities. So she got this deity and then she dressed him like a sannyasi, put a danda in his hand and placed him at the altar and of course began worshipping him. So this happened while Srila Prabhupada was in Bombay. So when he came back, Himavati wanted to show him how she was faithfully worshipping her husband in separation. So she brought the deity before Prabhupada. She probably thought that he would figure it out. It was an image of her husband, Hamsadutta. But when Prabhupada saw the deity, he exclaimed, "You cannot dress Gaur Nitai like sannyasis. We worship them like princes, like a prince." But she didn't have the heart to tell him that it was her husband. But she realized that her idea was bogus and she gave it up. So these things come up. So these bogus tendencies, as it's there in the verse in the purport, we can understand this is coming from bogus gurus. Therefore, a qualified leader or a person who's a good leader will eradicate such bogus leaders. And therefore, Prithu Maharaj took up his bow and was prepared to kill Indra. Sometimes, we overestimate. Just like at one time, the devotees thought, well, Srila Prabhupada is Krishna. Anyway, that was in New Vrindavan, and there was a great offense. But the worst was, there was only one thing worse than underestimating the Guru. Underestimating the Guru is not good, but overestimating the Guru, that's also not good. That's bad. But only one devotee at that time, I recall, Hayagriva Prabhu, was the only person who protested, so he was the most intelligent among them. And then after speaking to Prabhupada on the phone, one devotee, Rupanuga, who was one of the GBC men, he triumphantly announces to the devotees in New Vrindavan that the sannyasis have been speaking nonsense and nobody should listen to them. And Prabhupada, he is a dear servant of Krishna, but he's not Krishna. We don't preach like that. And surrendering to the spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master, is the best qualification for spreading this movement of Krishna consciousness to the Western world or wherever we are. And we should have unflinching faith in Krishna. It is also important when we preach to new people is to request them to develop a strong faith in Srila Prabhupada. Generally, when I meet people, I give them lectures of Prabhupada, or if I'm cultivating them or developing them to advance in spiritual life, we make them hear about Prabhupada. Because quite often people direct them to their spiritual master, and then they think, that's not bad, but that's, I'm sure the spiritual master will direct them to Prabhupada. But it's important for them to know who the founder, Acharya, is. And in this particular instance where they're thinking Prabhupada was Krishna, that was not good. And these were senior men. And he wanted them to rectify themselves or their thought processes. Then there was a letter that was written to Bali Mardan about that in August 25th, 1970. So it was very early. But in it there, Prabhupada, I'll just paraphrase it, he spoke about Chanakya Pandit. And he said, Chanakya Pandit said, if there is one tree in the forest producing nice aromatic flavor, then the tree can glorify the whole forest by the flavor of its flower. And he said, but similarly, if there is one tree in whose cavity there is little fire, because sometimes we see some cavities in a tree and the fire is burning inside, but you don't see the fire, you just see the tree, the tree itself. So similarly, if there's one tree whose cavity there's a little fire, then one can burn the tree into ashes and the whole forest. Everything will be finished. So he was quoting this, he was saying this in this letter to Bali Mardan. So this simile is applicable anywhere. So similarly, if there's one good boy, he can glorify the whole family. Like that. And similarly, if there is a bad boy, he can burn the whole family into ashes. So similarly, if there's one bad disciple, he can burn this whole institution into ashes. He can burn this whole institution into ashes. So therefore, it is the duty of the governing body commission to see that every member is following the rules, the regulation, and executing Krishna consciousness the way Prabhupada had envisaged it to function after his departure. Just before I came here, I was looking at a few things. When Lord Chaitanya accepted sannyas, was mainly one of the reasons to deliver the Mayavad sannyasis. And Prabhupada writes that in the purport, although there was actually no need for him to accept sannyas, that's Lord Chaitanya, he did so for the benefit of those who might think him an ordinary human being. The main purpose of his accepting sannyas was to deliver the Mayavad sannyasis. This is in the Adi Leela, chapter 7, text 33, purport. And also, sannyasis from the Hare Krishna movement do not associate with Mayavad sannyasis, nor accept invitations from people who consider Mayavad sannyasi and Vaishnava is to be one and the same. But there's so many examples. But they, in a purport in Madhya Leela, Prabhupada says, and which is important, why we accept sannyas. Only one who is very serious, who follows the regulative principle and studies the Vedic literatures, may accept sannyas in Kali Yuga. That's in the Madhya Leela in the purport also. So somebody who is very serious can do that. Now in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, also in the Adilila, there's an incident of where a neophyte devotee who was questioning Lord Chaitanya, who was chanting Gopi, Gopi, instead of the holy name of Krishna. So the devotee, he does not understand the significance of Lord Chaitanya's action, and he perceived that to be offensive. The devotee does not understand the significance of Lord Chaitanya's action, and is thus perceived as offensive. In response, Lord Chaitanya becomes angry and rebukes the student, which escalates to a physical confrontation. The devotees have to intervene to calm the situation. There was like kind of a misunderstanding, and it became a little more physical. But then we look at Lord Chaitanya's perspective. So I was trying to paraphrase the pastime and look at it from Lord Chaitanya's perspective, where Lord Chaitanya's reaction emphasized that the chanting of Gopi Gopi in the holy name of Krishna are on a transcendental level. It's on a spiritual level. It's beyond mundane piety or ritualistic value. This is the actions of a pure devotee. And Lord Chaitanya, like Lord Chaitanya, often beyond the comprehension of neophyte devotees. But we also have people who are not immersed in this, and then they want to imbibe this or enter into this deep rasa tattva, intimate association of the gopis, the Ras Leela. We have so many people nowadays who want to speak about this. Then, that the student's misunderstanding, he was a neophyte, and he didn't really understand, Krishna consciousness. So, the students, because all the students got together and they were kind of challenging Lord Chaitanya. And this is what it is, that, and the way we wrote it, the students' collective anger and their decision to criticize Lord Chaitanya highlight the challenges faced by spiritual teachers in dealing with deeply ingrained misconceptions. The situation escalates as the students, driven by the lack of understanding and pride, retaliate and criticize the Lord. So what was the resolution? So Lord Chaitanya resolved that yes, that if I accept the renounced order of life, if I accept sannyas, then they will, generally there's some respect for sannyasis. And by offering obeisances to him, they could come to higher platforms and they could be delivered. So that is the main reason why he accepts sannyas. to gain. He believed that a sannyas is more likely to receive reverence. Yeah. Oh. Sorry about that, yeah. So therefore he accepts sannyas. I just wanted to read from the Chaitanya, there's the last point, and then we can take some question. He writes in the purport, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they will diminish their offenses and are automatically awaken to their natural positional or devotional service. As it is said, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Kabunai. Krishna Prema can be awakened in a purified heart. The more we offer obeisances to sannyasis, especially Vaishnava sannyasis, the more we diminish our offenses and purify our hearts. Only in a purified heart can Krishna Prema awaken. This is the process of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's cult, the Krishna consciousness movement. Because his Lord Chaitanya is saying, offering obeisances will relieve them of all reactions to their offenses, then by their grace, devotional service will awaken in their pure hearts. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Any comments or questions? We got like about a few minutes. We can take some, if there's any comments or questions. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Hare Krishna. You had a good sleep?